Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 podcast. I'm your host, Steven Negishi, along with my co host from the Awful Announcing, the associate editor, Ken Fang. Ken, good evening, and I hope you enjoyed your week, whatever that was in store for you. How are you?
I'm good, Stephen. Good to be on with you, and just to let everybody know that we will be on Sundays around this time, 7 o'clock Eastern time. We hope to be. I know we've had some requests to have a more consistent time. So for the next few weeks, at least, you can expect us around Sunday night, 7 Eastern time, here on your platforms, whether it's on X, Blue Sky, or YouTube. So that at least you'll know that when we're going to be live.
Exactly. So we appreciate the fans sticking around. And, like Ken said, we're going to start with the Sunday night at 7 p.m. And then see, if we need to change, which is always going to be subject to change, depending on our schedule and availability, etc. So, but for now, like Ken said, we're sticking to Sunday, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. And we appreciate you joining us once again on this Sunday evening. All right, Ken, let's start with the conversation on the NFL draft, which pretty much dominated the sports scene over the weekend. And we'll get to the Shedeur Sanders story, which obviously certainly concerning you the most about the because you being a longtime Cleveland Brown fan and also the prank call, et cetera, et cetera. But overall, Ken, let's start with the NFL draft coverage. It's always been ESPN and the
NFL Network.
NFL Network, excuse me, that kind of got in my way. But Shedeur Sanders' draft fiasco kind of caused longtime NFL draft guru Mel Kiper to kind of go on a wild rant pretty much the entire week. And a lot of people seem to be up in arms over, Mel Kiper's wild rant in front of his more esteemed, ESPN colleagues, Reese Davis, Louis Riddick, Matt Miller, of course. I forgot one other, Field Yates, among others. Ken, let me ask you an honest question from a media perspective. Your thoughts on Mel Kiper's actions and his attitude, and do you feel like has Mel Kiper may have reached his end as a draft analyst, or do you feel like this is a nothing burger?
No, I mean Mel being Mel, and without Mel, there's no NFL draft like we have on TV. I mean,
Right.
yeah, Mel made this what was a little small cottage industry, making his draft guide into now we have other draft nicks like, of course, we had Todd McShay. We have other people. Peter Schrager will probably eventually take over for Mel on the main stage for ESPN. We have we have some of the other people. We had Mike Mayock at one time for the NFL Network. We have some of the other people now. And it's just great to watch, and I enjoy it. Mel is Mel. I think he should continue as long as he wants to. I don't think this is. I mean, yes, was he going overboard with Shedeur Sanders? Of course, but Mel has his hills that he likes to die on, and I really feel that. I don't think he was wrong on Shedeur. I also think there was a lot of NFL executives who were afraid to draft Shedeur because of the baggage he carries with his father, Coach Prime. So I don't think I don't think he's embarrassed himself, Steven. I don't think it went that far, to be honest with him. I don't think it's time for him to hang it up. I think Mel is Mel. He's had his battles with, of course, remember with his battles with the Indiana Colts general manager. I think it was Bill Polian a long time ago. He's battled with the New York Jets. Has he been wrong before? Of course he has. Not everything is.
I remember the Jimmy Clausen one. He really put his stock into it.
Right.
He really literally put his reputation, and yet somehow Jimmy Clausen turned out to be one of the biggest busts
Yeah,
out there, and he is still on television for some reasons.
right. But I think Mel is great. I enjoy him. He has his quirks. He's from Baltimore. He does a great job. So I don't think he really embarrassed himself, Steve. I think he was pounding the table on Shedeur Sanders. Is he going to be correct on Shedeur? We don't know. We need time to look at and see what he's going to do. He also went on. He felt that Johnny Manziel was going to be great too. So we have to. The draft is an inexact science, Steven. We have to see how this is going to play out. I don't think it's not time for him to hang up. I think Mel's can be on the draft as long as he wants to. Is he going to be like Lee Corso being on when he's 95? Probably not. But I think it's just fun for him to be there, and he's really great for the draft. And ESPN is going to have him there as long as he wants to be there.
Now, for those who didn't even pay a single minute of the NFL draft because it's nothing for you, or maybe you had other things to do on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night, here's the Ken's website also talking about the rant that we were talking on Mel Kiper going off on Shedeur Sanders.
No, we can't play that video. Be very careful about that. I don't think we can play that's a copyright issue, so I don't think we can play that video. So we have to be very careful. In fact, take that off because we can't play video on here. We'll get a strike on our channel, so we have to be careful about that. So and ESPN is also going to call it out. So I again, we have to be careful about that. So yes,
okay, fine.
Yeah, in true regard for that, Steven, I just think that to be honest with you, of course, it got to be at least. I do admit that it got to be a little bit ad nauseum for a bit, but I just think that without Mel, and I know some people feel that Mel goes overboard on a lot of things, but without him there, ESPN needs to have him there because I think he's just he does a fantastic job. And, like I said, the draft, I mean, who is 100% right on the draft anyway? No one is. And we certainly see the Jets, how their record is. So I think that Mel brings a lot of, Mel brings his own, He brings his own stuff to the draft, and he's enthusiastic about it. And without him, we don't have this type of NFL coverage.
Right, I understand. Mel made a niche industry into where a lot of people, whether mainstream or on their own, there are a lot of draft experts, quote unquote, that have certainly popped up in the recent years. And I think there is a certain level of gratitude towards Mel Kiper for making turning the NFL draft into as big as it is right now these days. So, but I do believe that at some point, yes, I think ESPN is fully prepared for an inevitable retirement or maybe a budget cut like we've seen ESPN. Fired. Well, we'll see. Listen, we'll see. Okay. I know people say that these people will never be fired and all that kind of stuff in media world these days. The layoffs have become a norm. So ESPN nowadays have more than enough NFL draft experts that they can tally or carry on even without Mel. And this is not against Mel because of his miss with Shedeur Sanders. I'm just saying that we've seen a lot of people laid off on the ESPN side before, Todd McShay being one of them a couple of years back as well, if you remember. So they have people like Jordan Reed, who has become one of the respected voices in the draft community. Matt Miller, obviously has been one of the people who have been on the stage sitting next to Mel Kiper all these years after starting with the Bleacher Report. And Louis Riddick, he was like a last-minute replacement for somebody back in over a decade ago, and he has become a main fixture. In addition to calling college football games on Saturdays, so his voice along with the fact that he was a former, NFL safety and also worked in the NFL front office. He's still waiting for his opportunities to maybe get back into becoming a general manager or hold a high-ranking positions still there. But as long as Louis Riddick continues to offer his analysis, I think, I think ESPN is definitely in a good position, with or without Mel Kiper moving forward.
And they also signed Peter Schrager, who was on the Pat McAfee alt cast. I think eventually he'll go up there as well. Daniel Jeremiah does a fantastic job for NFL Network. He's, of course, the Chargers radio analyst. He was done on a lot of his analysis. So I usually watch NFL Network anyway, Steven. I don't like watching Mike Greenberg. I think he's a terrible host. I would rather have painful recollection than watch anything with Mike Greenberg. So I watch NFL Network and Rich Eisen, and even when Chris Berman was hosting in the final years, I refused to watch ESPN. I'll watch NFL Network. And hopefully, the whole talk about ESPN taking NFL Network, which is still a distinct possibility. Hopefully, NFL Network will continue to cover the NFL draft and provide that alternate broadcast, because I don't want to watch anything that Mike Greenberg is a part of. As long as he's hosting that, I refuse to watch him. I will boycott Mike Greenberg, and he was hosting along with Mel Kiper. I'd rather, like I said, I'd rather get a communicable disease I'd rather get some type of disease than watch Mike Greenberg on the air.
I watched on the local ABC channel where Reese Davis and the college football game day crew, minus Lee Corso and Pat McAfee, was doing the broadcast. And I actually kind of enjoyed that one a little more because obviously, it's over the airwave and then not the streaming services. There will be some lag if you watch it on ESPN, unless you're watching it on cable or like a smart TV. There's going to be some lag time, of course, as well. But I understand the notion that NFL Network is maybe a little more, say, I don't want to say professional, but I think the way they do cover, it seems as though they have certainly their share of fans like yourself, and that it's going to be very, very interesting moving forward. Whether the ESPN, maybe they might tell Mel to hey, calm down a little bit after the the Shedeur Sanders hot takes and stuff like that. But we shall see. All right, let's look at the overall draft itself, Ken. So let's see. Your Cleveland Browns took obviously 2 running backs in this this year's draft, but obviously the biggest story, of course, your team picking 2nd overall initially, and then traded out and moved down to the 5th spot with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So instead of taking Travis Hunter, you ended up settling 5th overall with the Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham in the 1st round. And then you took running back Quinshon Judkins, of Ohio State by way of Ole Miss. But they also spent another running back in Dylan Sampson, who's a pretty good player in his own right, leading the SEC in rushing and scoring touchdowns, etc. And then, of course, the 5th round, which kind of overshadows pretty much the other players that were selected in this one, is Shedeur Sanders, 5th overall, 144 pick. Give me your overall thoughts on the Browns draft. Let's start with the 1st round trade out. What were your feelings when the Browns decided to trade out of that one?
I was not very happy about that because, I in order to be relevant, you got to get players in, and you got to get fans in the seats. I thought Travis Hunter would be a perfect fit, and Andrew Berry, who is the Cleveland Browns general manager, even compared Travis Hunter to Shohei Ohtani because of the players, and of course,
right.
And you're gonna make. Of course, I think that was more now looking back. That was more of him making a case in point for trade. So Jacksonville and Cleveland were talking all day before the first round to make that trade. Cleveland does get Jacksonville's first round pick for next year, but I have to admit, Steven, I almost blew my top in regards to this trade because I didn't know that Cleveland was going to draft Mason Graham, which is actually a very good move because you have Myles Garrett. He's gonna draw some attention. So it ended up being a very good pick. But at the time, I felt that here's a chance for you to get a player of great magnitude in Travis Hunter. He's likely going to be a rookie of the year. He's going to be a great receiver. He's going to be, I don't say he's going to be a shutdown corner. He's probably going to play situational on defense. You can't have him play full time on both defense and on offense in the National Football League. You just can't do that. But I think he would play situational, maybe on third downs, on passing situations for Jacksonville. And I think that's how he was going to be used in Cleveland. But to be honest with you, I have to say that it was a good move to drop down to get a compliment from Myles Garrett, who was signed over the offseason, a long-term contract. So you definitely need that to improve the defense. The running back to get from Ohio State was a very good move. Of course, they also picked a quarterback. You did mention, but
Dylan Gabriel, yes, third round. I have no idea about that one.
So that was also with the intrigue. We all thought that they were going to pick a Shedeur Sanders in the third round with the first pick of the third round on the first pick of the second round. I'm sorry, that did not happen on Friday night. Then Shedeur Sanders kept slipping. So I thought Cleveland had pretty much moved on when they picked the quarterback from Oregon. But then finally on Saturday they made the trade to move up in the fifth round to pick Shedeur Sanders. Now, it's an interesting pick, Steven. I have to I can't give an A to the Cleveland Browns on this. I have to say incomplete. I can't give him a grade because, first of all, a lot of the moves that Andrew Berry made, and if you saw the draft room when the Shedeur Sanders pick was made, they didn't. They did not.
Very unenthusiastic look of the Andrew Berry, right?
Yeah. And I think that might have been a pick by the owner, Jimmy Haslam. He said, hey, look, I have a feeling that's what happened. So I have to say that Andrew Berry, he had it was kind of like a mad scientist watching him pick. I'm still not convinced that Andrew Berry is the executive for the Cleveland Browns. And Kevin Stefanski, he's gone through all this pulling back and forth with, of course, Deshaun Watson and having to defend it. So I have to hear his spin on this one. He's talked about Mason Graham. I'm sure Andrew Berry has his reasons for doing the things that he did. I do think that there is some improvement, especially on the defense and getting a running back, getting two good running backs. But I'm not very convinced about how he performed in this particular draft, Steven. So I give them an incomplete. I'm not very happy with it. But Shedeur Sanders is definitely going to be the talk of the training camp in Berea in Ohio throughout the summer. So we're going to have to. It'll be interesting. And I don't think I think Hard Knocks has already been picked. Has Hard Knocks been picked for this season? Because it'll be interesting. It'd be interesting to see if they decide to choose the Browns for the upcoming season, but I don't know if that's been chosen as of yet. But I think it's going to be quite interesting, Steven, for the training camp, especially with Shedeur Sanders. We have Joe Flacco right now there. He's probably going to be the starter. Shedeur is not going to be starting. He's going to be, and it's a good thing for him too. He needs to. When you have a guy like Joe Flacco. Of course, he showed some regression last year with Indianapolis, but he brought the Browns a couple seasons ago to the playoffs. So I think that, and he knows Stefanski's system. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that when they start, Steven, that Flacco will start the season. Everybody else is on the bench, and we'll see how things go from there. But overall, I give right now Andrew Berry. I'm not very happy with him overall as general manager, and I have to give him an incomplete for this particular draft.
Your colleague from Alpha Announcing, Ben Axelrod, who we had a guest as a guest previously, and hopefully maybe Ben will be kind enough to join us down the road very, very soon to offer his take on the Browns. He said that the Browns don't care about giving their fans an entertaining product, let alone winning. They
Very
just care about seeming smart. The worst run franchise in all of sports. Now, this is, as you can see, 8/17 on 2024, the first night, day one. And I responded, Hunter would have been entertaining, but he alone can't change the team himself. Your thoughts on your colleague and fellow Brown, Ben Axelrod, commenting about,
No, he's right. He's right. I think that this could have now. Travis Hunter could have made the, and now that with Shedeur Sanders there, you could have had this nice combination of the two former teammates playing in Cleveland, and you would have had, Dion coming in every once in a while. But again, I think a lot of NFL teams going back to the fact that Shedeur, with his dad, never been benched, doesn't have an NFL agent. He doesn't have a guy, and Dion's his agent. I think that scared off a lot of teams. Now, how they're going to handle the situation, I don't know, but I think it would have been great to have Travis there. But, Mason Graham, again, having a compliment from Myles Garrett is important. You want to improve on defense. So I don't know. I'm not sure where Mason Graham was, so how high he was on draft boards. But to be honest with you, he's done a very good job at Michigan and bolstering that defense on the front line. So I think it's definitely going to help Myles Garrett. But overall, I think Ben is right. I think that Andrew Berry was thinking more about analytics and of course Jimmy Haslam is thinking about putting fans in the seats. So I agree with what Ben said there, that Andrew Berry wants to look smart and look like the instead of trendy picks, he wants to pick smart. And okay, that's fine, but again, you have to be a little. You want to get some relevancy for your team, and I think Andrew Berry he just seems to want to get. I mean, it's one thing to get best available player, but I don't even know what he was thinking about there in the fifth pick there. I eventually am coming around to be okay with it, but again, Steven, I'm still trying to think what I can't get into the head of Andrew Berry and what he's thinking as general manager. I'm still not convinced he's the best choice to lead our team.
Now, talking about, in all fairness, we need to talk about the other picks that was taken. Here's Yahoo grading this picks. Carson Schlesinger, who is probably the one of the top linebackers.
Yeah.
Who I thought was a kind of a surprising pick at 33 overall, which is, I believe, their own number, their second round pick, of course, and. He was an All-American, and because he says here, Browns insurance for JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, whose future is uncertain after he suffered a season-ending neck injury last year. But I like JOK, as a player coming out of Notre Dame. So hopefully he and Schlesinger form a very good linebacker there. Sean Jenkins is a terrific running back. Obviously, he had to share time with Travion Henderson, and but overall, with Judkins and Sampson being drafted, I think I think the Browns fans may have seen the last of Nick Chubb at this point, right?
It's a possibility. I mean, Chubb has had his injury.
Free agent too, of course.
Yeah, he's a free agent too. So I'm not sure what. Again, Andrew Berry, I don't know what he's thinking. But maybe Chubb, maybe Berry's thinking that the life of a running back in the NFL is short. So let's get someone younger in there. It's very possible that that's his thinking. But again, I can't. It used to be I could kind of like gauge what the Cleveland front office is doing. Berry, I think, tries to get too cute for his own good, Steven.
Yeah, I think that Nick Chubb, unfortunately, may have played his final down with the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, he's a free agent.
Right.
Obviously, you need to replace he's been hit with the injuries the last 2 seasons, unfortunately. He's
Right.
also getting up there in age. He's almost close to being 30 years old, which obviously, when you're a running back, at 30 years old and with the wear and tear he has had in his career, that usually is not a good combination. Harold
Right.
Fannin Jr., who's a tight end out of Bowling Green. He had a greatest season in tight end as a year ago as a junior out of Bowling Green nearby. His footwork is a bit of a mess because he runs. His running is a bit of a clunky, according to some people saying that. But you're not going to be able to have 1,500 and score 10 touchdowns. Without being talented. So I'm very, very curious to see how he fits for the Browns offense. Because David Njoku, he's getting up there in age, and he also has a 1 year left on his contract, so he might be somebody that becomes their starting tight end officially in 2026. And then, of course, Dylan Gabriel. I didn't get this pick at all, to be honest, considering that they picked him in the third
I
round.
don't know what they're thinking. I don't. I really don't. I mean, he's not a great quarterback to begin with. I mean, yeah,
Well, he had a very good college career. Let's just say that.
Yeah, let's just say that. I don't think he's graded very high. On the fact that he was drafted ahead of Shedeur Sanders was very strange. I think Andrew Berry wanted him more than Shedeur. It's going to be an interesting training camp to have them both there, competing for a spot. So I really don't know what they were thinking there, to be honest with you, to get those two rookie quarterbacks. Either you get one or the other. You don't get two rookie quarterbacks, and there's definitely some conflict in the Cleveland front office and the ownership about those two picks.
Right. It's one thing you draft a quarterback who wasn't exactly rated high, and then you come back in the 2 rounds later and draft a most polarizing draft prospect, and we've had in quite some times in Shedeur Sanders. And you mentioned Andrew Berry's nonchalant looks when the pick was announced, and certainly it does speak volume that maybe Jimmy Haslam was the culprit behind Sanders forcing him to pick Sanders after they took Dylan Gabriel, who, with both two quarterbacks, you have a pretty crowded quarterback room with already, with Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and then 2 rookies, and then holdover Deshaun Watson, who probably will never play another down, not only with the Browns, but in the NFL in general, I guess. But, very interesting to see what kind of a decision awaits them for, Cleveland here. So let's talk about the, Shedeur Sanders and the impact the media had on the, his coverage. There were a lot of anonymous sources openly criticizing Shedeur's, attitude and his interview being incredibly poor and all that kind of stuff, with the, using the anonymous sources stuff. And then a lot of people are openly complaining that if you're going to put that into, if you're going to put it out there, you better have a name next to you. Of course, it's a little difficult because, you're putting yourself out there in the open. What is your thoughts on now that the Sanders were taken in the 5th round by your Cleveland Browns, and this, the media discourse on the way he was covered, and because, the arrogance perceived because of being a Deion Sanders' son and everything.
Yeah, I didn't like the coverage, and I didn't like, it seemed like there was race seemingly behind this whole thing, Steven. So I was really unhappy about the whole thing. Even if the Cleveland Browns even if the Browns selected, I would feel this way. I didn't think it was good about these anonymous sources who are coming over. And I said, and absolutely, if you're gonna put yourself out there, put your name behind it. I think that there were. I understand that some NFL executives, and like I said earlier, were probably a little bit afraid the fact that Dion might be coming around and and be a little bit overbearing and saying, hey, look, he's a stage dad and what's going on. But I really feel that Shedeur is a talent, and I think he's definitely going to improve an NFL team. He's going to improve the Browns if he can hang on and stay and show something during training camp. I don't think Dion's going to be lingering. He's got his own coach. He's got his own need to coach in Colorado.
Sure.
And yes, was it a little bit much that they retired his number in Colorado? Sure, but that's Dion. That's Dion being flashy. But I think that Shedeur Sanders is the coverage of him and the fact that the NFL executives, whoever they were, making these complaints and putting out stories and writers putting out some clickbait. I think that's definitely that's on them, and we have to see what Shedeur can do. And I think I think a lot of these NFL executives really have to say, hey, look, if I'm going to have to say something like this, I have to put my name on it. And I think it was really some of the. I'm not really happy with the especially the media coverage on that. Sure, Dion is Dion, and the fact that Shedeur didn't have an agent, I think that hurt him. But at the same time, he is. I think he was, aside from Cam Ward, he was the best talent out there, and unfortunately, he slid as a result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that these executives and coaches, they really need to, if you're gonna put those things out there, which certainly impacts the perception and the draft grade of these players, put it out there. I mean, This is what you do for a living. Your name is there. Your name is listed as a coach scout in the team's website. This is what you do for a living. You've done it for a long time, pal. If you're gonna put it out there, you should have the confidence to say, this is what happened. This is my side of the story. And you shouldn't just use the unnamed or unnamed sources or anonymous coach, scout, GM, blah blah blah, whatever.
Right.
It's unfair in my opinion. There's no question. And I'll certainly say this. Obviously, even if Shedeur Sanders was not drafted by neither one of our teams, I still think that I think it was completely unfair coverage, in my opinion. There's no question about it.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, I'll talk about my Chicago Bears for a little bit. I have to say that this draft, was the last draft in which the Chicago Bears had the Carolina Panthers draft pick, and they got in that massive trade 2 years ago, which garnered them receiver DJ Moore, cornerback Tyreek Stevenson, a couple of others, of course, Darnell Wright, which was of course the Chicago pick, but the most important one, of course, is the Caleb Williams draft pick last year at this time. So this year's draft was somewhat subdued. Because we knew we had the number one overall pick. We knew who was going to pick. There was a real excitement. There was a palpable, excitement, I should say, leading up to the draft. Not only that, because we also had the number 9 pick overall. That was the Chicago pick. That was Rome Odunze. So there was a bit of an excitement there. This year, it was a little more subdued, picking 10th overall. There were a lot of smoke screens about, the Bears wanting to move up to take the Ashton Genty out of Boise State, moving up to 5th, which of course Jacksonville had it before Jacksonville made that trade with your Cleveland Browns, Ken. But eventually he went to Las Vegas Raiders, like I predicted. 6th overall. Pete Carroll wants his own Marshawn Lynch, of course, so it's no surprise there. And they took Colston Loveland, 10th overall, over Mackey Award and All-American tight end Tyler Warren. I know there was a bit of a confusion on that part, but I think, I feel that Loveland is a better tight end in terms of stretching the field, running the routes better than maybe some of the receivers that was taken, especially Tetaora McMillan, who was taken by Carolina 8th overall. I know somebody said that Loveland, has a better route running skills than some of the receivers like McMillan. Of course, he's coming off a shoulder injury, which he had to battle. He like an AC joint injury, which he played through, and then he also suffered unfortunate consequences of playing at Michigan a year after they won the national title. J.J. McCarthy goes to the NFL, and they ended up having to play 3 different quarterbacks, and his production suffered greatly. But Loveland just turned 21, whereas Tyler Warren turned 23. So there's the 2-year age gap between both sides, of course. And, at 21, Loveland is still very much young enough. And then 23, he becomes somebody that, Warren didn't have a big production until he was last year at 22, turning 23. So the youth factor, I think, certainly came in, and, the injuries are 100% cleared now. And I do believe that Loveland is a better fit for, Ben Johnson's offense. His NFL comparison, by the way, is actually, believe it or not, Sam Laporta, the guy that, he coached in Detroit for 2 years. And, Laporta turned into a pretty good, a tight end, one of the better tight ends in this game right now. Second round, they had 2. I was very shocked when they took Luther Burden from Missouri, who was considered a number 1 wide receiver coming into this year. But I have a feeling that, rather than taking a running back, of course, unfortunately, 1 pick earlier, New England took Travion Henderson, and the Bears suddenly had to pivot and took Luther Burden, which obviously gives them another wide receiver and another strong weapon for Caleb Williams. They traded down in one of their second-round picks. And, of course, that was helped out by WWE superstar Seth Rollins, who is a noted Chicago Bears fan. And then, it was announced that Ozzie Trapilo was the pick. I'm kind of a little bit, underwhelmed by the pick. The Bears definitely needed a offensive tackle, but the offensive tackle was, taken, quickly snatched up in the first and the second round picks, especially in the late first and the second round. So Bears went deep to pick Ozzie Trapilo. The other picks, whenever they had a chance to pick a running back or somebody else, they ended up losing. So they kept trading down. So it was kind of a challenge for me to focus when I was doing my live stream with the other people, Nick Whalen and Rashab Shakiri, as well as Philip Charles Van Hayden, who was in Green Bay. Shout out to all 4 of them for being there. Right. And I had a lot of good times, but, we had to wait a long, long time for the Bears to make those picks. And, Shamar Turner, the defensive tackle with Texas A&M, was available. I think he will be more of an edge rusher, which he was a year before, possibly, having to move inside in 24 to make room for Nick Scorton, who was a transfer from Purdue, who was taken the 50 later in the second round by Carolina. So overall, I think those 3 picks were the most important picks, in my opinion. I know people were somewhat underwhelmed by Loveland and then Luther Burden's pick because we didn't have the running backs that we could. But in my opinion, I think the Bears possibly put their emphasis on signing guards, Jonah Jackson, plus center Drew Dahlman, and also acquired Joe Tooney. So the upgrading the offensive line. So I am going to guess that, and then Ozzie Trapilo was also added to the left tackle mix, perhaps. I think the upgrade in the offensive line means that, the holdover running backs like DeAndre Swift and Roshan Johnson are probably seen as somebody that could excel in the new offense with a better offensive line. But at the same time, I would not be shocked if the Bears decide to sign somebody like J.K. Dobbins or your Browns running back Nick Chubb to a 1-year deal, just to give a more veteran presence. In the in the summertime, perhaps, when the veterans out there, are starting to maybe their asking price kind of starts to come down a little bit. Of course, Chubb with his injuries, maybe $3 million plus incentives for 1 year could be enough to entice Chubb to, join the Bears or somebody else who needs a veteran running back. Of course, I know the Bears also added Kyle, Monangy, 7th round running back out of Rutgers, who is had a pretty good career out in Rutgers. Never fumbled in his entire 4 years down there. Very interesting to see, as a 7th rounder, if he has a chance to stick, or if the Bears decide to go with a more veteran approach. Overall, I think I give this draft, a solid a B plus because of those first 3 picks, along with the the other picks. They were somewhat underwhelming, even with all the trading that they did. It was kind of difficult for me to kind of focus. The day 3 was a little bit of more of a meh because of all the trading and the running backs that they did not pick that was still out there, unfortunately.
Right.
So, but more importantly, I think Ben Johnson, hopefully, now that he's a head coach, he's ready to, turn all of his players that they got, Luther Burden, DJ Moore, they're similar players, and maybe both of them will likely play more of a Deebo Samuel role, receivers who play out of the backfield. And, Deebo Samuel, before he got injured and it was, traded to Washington this offseason, he was a very good player, until, Christian McCaffrey came in and, he had to play a little bit of more of a lesser role, of course. But I could be seeing those 2 guys playing Deebo Samuel role, running out of the backfield a little bit more in order to compensate for the lack of top end running backs. But now there's no more excuses for Caleb Williams. This is his 2nd year. He needs to step up and offensive line, weapons. He's got it all. Now he has to go out there and put it all together, in my opinion. All right, let's talk about the unfortunate situation in. Almost supposed to be a celebration of, young men and their family members who went through so much to make their dreams a reality, and that needed to be, the center focus of the story. The 2025 draft, unfortunately, will be remembered for Shedeur Sanders' stock dropping significantly, and then the prank on him. And I know Shedeur Sanders was the one of the victims, but I also found out that Tyler Warren, who was the Colts' #1 overall pick, was also a subject of a prank call victim. And we learned today that Jax Ulbrich, who is the son of Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator and former Jets DC, and then also the interim coach last year after Robert Saleh got unceremoniously fired, and the team went nowhere because of Aaron Rodgers. Mostly, it turns out it was his son who was one of the culprits in the prank call, imposing as New Orleans general manager Micket Loomis, saying that they're going to take him, and only to recant that statement. I'm not going to play that, the prank call, because it just makes me sick to my stomach. Here's the statement from Jax Ulbrich on his Instagram. Thank you. And then Ken, I think you might notice this already, and I posted this on my Twitter as well. On the second paragraph, second line, he misspells Shedeur.
Yeah.
It's Seedeur, not Duer. So, his excuse, in my opinion, comes off as somewhat of a, I'm sure he did this with well intent, but, when you misspell somebody's name like this kind of discredits your own apologies. And, it was selfish and childish. I could never imagine getting ready to celebrate one of your greatest moments of your life, and I made a terrible mistake and missed that moment. Ken, I know there was one other person who was there, and then Jax Ulbrich was not the one who was making the phone call, but he was actually sitting next to the guy making that phone call and laughing. And this is a terrible look, in my opinion. I was listening to ESPN radio a little bit, and then they were very, very heated about this. Your thoughts on this prank call situation? And I'm about to write something on the fan-sided about this incident that targeted both Tyler Warren and Shedeur Sanders. About the of course, the Falcons already said they're not going to punish Jeff Ulbrich, which I believe is nonsense in my opinion. Give me your thoughts on this prank and the role that that the NFL should do to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Well, they gave out, I guess it was the iPad or tablet that Jeff Ulbrich had, and I guess his son was using it and saw a number and was able to see the contact and the numbers, and all this is, of course, is supposed to be
confidential.
It's sensitive information, and I guess his son saw it, and he says, "Okay, well." He took the number down, and then I guess went to his friend, and then that's how they pulled the prank. And of course, you may have seen Shedeur Sanders was doing a live stream at the time, and also was able to get that. And also, the kids were only doing their own live stream, and not it might have not been a live stream, but they also took video of it and posted it. It's not a good look for Jeff Ulbrich, okay, but I will also
as a father and a parent. I will say this. As a father and a parent, this is not a good look.
Right. You have to protect that information. You got to protect that. Your son wants to use your iPad, but in this case, it's probably not an iPad because the NFL has a contract with Microsoft's Touch tablet, so it's probably on a Microsoft tablet. But whatever it is, you gotta protect that information. And you just gotta say, "Hey, son, go ahead and use it." I will say this: 6 months from now, Steven, are we going to remember this story? No, we're not. We're not going to. This story is going to blow. This will blow over. I don't think that the Falcons, as you mentioned, the Falcons aren't going to fire Jeff
Ulbrich or no more.
And I don't think he should be fired. I just think that there should be some discipline. To say, hey, look, you had sensitive information.
100%.
You should at least be a little bit more aware and be a little bit more careful with that. Maybe suspending him for a little bit for that error is probably where we'll go with this. But I gotta say that the son, I think the son is more regretful that he got caught rather than regretful that about the mistake that he made.
It's an excuse everybody makes it when you get caught,
Yeah. So I think the kid
the story that you got caught. That's why you're apologizing.
Yeah, and I think he will learn a lesson from it. But still, at the same time, the NFL's got to be a little bit more careful about it. I think they're going to have to maybe do a little bit more encryption and be a little bit more careful in this because again, you can't have this information going out and maybe instead of bringing the tablet home. Maybe they have to lock it up at the stadium or at the team's offices to prevent that from happening again, Steven. You just can't have you can't have confidential information, sensitive information like numbers being taken home. And I know that the coaches need to take stuff home, but I think stuff like that, is probably going to have to. I think the new policy for the NFL is going to put that under lock, keep it in lock and key, lock it up in the team's facilities rather than allowing coaches to take it home.
See, I have a little more of a nuisance take, and I'll say this, not from a football perspective. This stuff, Ken, is every parent's nightmare. This kid, this is not a kid anymore. He's a 21-year-old grown-ass man, for the lack of better terms. Okay. And I think this is what one of the ESPN radio hosts were upset about. He's not a kid anymore.
Right.
And the other thing was Jax Ulbrich said that he I think whether it was he said it or I forget it was that Jeff Ulbrich unintentionally left the information available, and then that his son unintentionally took that information. It really doesn't make sense in my opinion. Whoever is that culprit here, there's a saying that like father, like son. Maybe there's a problem with Jeff Ulbrich as a parent and as a father, perhaps. This is not a good look on Jeff Ulbrich, unfortunately. I don't think he will be fired, but I do believe there should be a strong disciplinary action. If the Falcons aren't going to do it, then the NFL needs to come down on both the Falcons and Ulbrich himself, because you remember, Ken, a couple of years ago, the email scandal involving John Gruden that got him fired for that racist email that got leaked, and then also forced the Dan Snyder to sell the team.
Right.
So NFL has had this type of problems before, very lackadaisical when it comes to handling information. And I've always felt this. Maybe this is just me, Ken, that the football coaches in particular seems to be really, really detached from the realities of the world. Maybe, of course, a lot of coaches are probably detached from what's happening, not just in this country, but from around the world. These security issues are real. As an IT professional, I'm always be mindful about, being very, very careful about what I do with the laptops and the equipments that I have. There's a serious consequences of, these data breaches, data is being stolen on a regular basis. It happens. These cyber attacks are for real. And for these coaches to not take care of their own equipment, whether it's iPad or Microsoft Surfaces, especially at their own homes, speaks volume about some of these coaches maybe lack a serious awareness about the cyber terrorism or the data breaches that can happen anywhere. And, I'm sure the NFL will take this incident very, very seriously, because it overshadows what was supposed to be a huge celebratory moment, an event next to the Super Bowl. It is a big money-making event for the NFL, right? Right. And this thing overshadows the prank call, and it involved the son of one of the team's defensive coordinator. This is not a good look. I'm sure perhaps Roger Goodell is not feeling well after being in Green Bay, and now he has to hear about these types of stories involving two of their draft picks being pranked for and it would be hilarious, fair or not, that maybe Jax Ulbrich was also the idiot that pranked Tyler Warren. But I'm sure maybe this is a different prankster calling Tyler Warren, and I hope that there will be significant actions being taken to these imposters for trying to ruin a special moment for the draft prospects and their family members, right?
Right.
So I think that again, somebody will may not even care about this story, but NFL will definitely make sure that there's going to be a new policy in place where somebody like Jeff Ulbrich, and I believe that every coach, even a low-paid assistants, will be forced to take a course on, data breach, cybersecurity, and attacks and stuff like that. I think there needs to be a policy in place that punishes teams, perhaps, if they're not careful when it comes to handling sensitive information. And this is not just limited to coaching staff, but also the players, scouts, and the administrative people who work inside the team headquarters, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about the data breach, and you're absolutely right, because you're an IT, and that, Steven, and how data breaches can be damaging. And we've heard about ransomware attacks over the last few years.
Yes.
We've also heard about hacks as coming in as well. So there's definitely going to be, I definitely think over the off season, there's going to be a ramping up of the NFL security on the tablets and where they go. And like I said, I think they're probably going to say, hey, look, you don't bring them home anymore. You've got to put them under lock and key. You've got to be able to put it. They're going to stay in. They're going to stay in the facilities. If you want to take them home, there's certain programs that are not going to be able to be accessed from any of your family members at home. There's going to be either like a 2-factor authentication or something like that, because they can't allow something like that to ever get out again.
Absolutely. The two-part authentications, fingerprints, facial recognition, eye contacts. Those things, in real life needs to be put in place for the NFL. Again, these coaches sometimes seems to be detached from the realities of the world because they spend so much time inside their facilities. You hear stories about coaches staying all night, breaking down tapes, et cetera, and sleeping on the facilities, couches or beds, whatever. Well, it's fine and dandy, when you have your computers or laptops on, that's just open invite for ransomware that you mentioned, cyber attacks. And if God forbid, if teams wants to go step up further and steal, playbooks or, informations about certain players or, whether during the season or even on the scout, during the NFL draft scouting, these things are, a serious problem that's happening in the real world. And now the NFL is probably starting to understand the repercussion of it. And you want to make sure you want to protect your stars. Right. In this case, Shedeur Sanders and Tyler Warren, being in, and then the NFL has to, come up with a real solution that reflects the real world situation, in my opinion. So hopefully Roger Goodell and his people will take serious actions and then send a message to each team that, these types of, pranks will be seriously investigated. And then if you follow the trails, it will lead to maybe, in this case, Jeff Ulbrich, the laptop or information being, unintentionally being seen by somebody else or one of our family members for their own stupid pranks and stupid wanting stupid views on TikToks or Instagram or whatever. So again, this is a real life nightmare for every parent because your reputation is tarred not only as a football coach but more importantly as a parent and as a a father. You have a real consequences of being seen as a bad parent.
Right. Well, and not only that, Steven, NFL security is very. The NFL has its own security, and they're very
right.
They take this very seriously, and breaches are not very well liked. So you've got to. They take it. They have their own investigatory force, so they've got to. It's got to improve. So I think there's definitely going to be some type of new policy. We may not hear about it, but I think that definitely we're going to see something down the line that the players or the coaches have to either aren't allowed to bring their laptops or tablets home, or there's going to be an increased type of 2-factor authentication, so that only they get to see the apps and nobody else.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ken, let's wrap up our show tonight with our final words. Do you have anything that you would like to add regarding outside of the NFL draft or anything else in the sports or sports media world?
Well, I have to say that, again, a successful weekend, aside from the prank for the NFL, 3 days. I think Green Bay showed that they're a great host for the NFL, draft. It looked like Green Bay, which is a population of like 150,000, doubled their population with all the 250,000 people that they were there in the crowd.
Yeah.
This is proven to be, and now I was at the draft, the Brady Quinn draft at Radio City Music Hall, Stephen. That was when the NFL would constantly have it at that site instead of, and then when they decided to finally do a traveling road show, it was a big deal. And we saw how successful it was in Chicago. We saw how successful it was in Dallas. We're now seeing how successful it was in Detroit last year. It's going to Kansas City next year, Stephen, or is it staying in the NFC?
No. Kansas City was 2023. I went to that one on Saturday. I believe next year it's going to be in Pittsburgh.
Okay. So this is proven to be a great event, and NFL fans can congregate. Dan Patrick Show was there during the week for 3 days. They were at the bar on Mike Holmgren Way. It was a very successful show. Fans were there. They had all type of guests. It's kind of like Super Bowl week, Stephen, as you mentioned. It's like a Super Bowl week. It's the Super Bowl week. It's the Super Bowl for the off season, and it keeps the NFL in talk. So the fact is that the NFL probably will not go back to a smaller venue. They love seeing the fans there. We saw Seth Rollins, as you mentioned. Chelsea Green from the WWE was also there announcing the Seattle Seahawks pick. I
was not aware of that.
Yeah, so we saw all types of people, guests announcing picks. I think there was also Robert Irwin, who from Australia, announced a pick as well. So this has become
a lot of international fans on day 3 for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that there's no way that the NFL is going to go back you will never see it be back in Radio City Music Hall. You're going to see this as a traveling road show. They're going to hit all the NFL cities eventually. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to Boston down the line during that period. To see so many fans, and it looked like the fans were getting along. It looked like, you had all these fans from all the cities, from all of the United States, internationally as well. I think it's a great event. I would love to see. I was hoping to get to Green Bay. I couldn't get work. I couldn't find a network to bring me over, but hopefully next year in Pittsburgh. But Stephen, I think it's a great event, and it's a great thing for the NFL. And guess what, Stephen? Next month, the NFL keeps being relevant because we get the schedule release next week.
Right.
Next month. So
it happened during the Bears pick before it was announced. So it was just like 5 minutes extra long time that I had to wait for my Bears to make that pick.
Yeah, you had Rollo Rutledge and Wolf making a big production of it. Something that could have really easily been announced in an email, but instead they decided to announce it to the NFL draft. They have the audience, why not? But anyway, we have that coming up next month. But I think, Stephen, for me, the NFL draft, it's become you got to see a little. If you watched ESPN, they showed a little bit of a tape of what it was like for the very first draft that they covered in 1983. Where you remember the old helmet phones that they had and all that stuff?
Yeah. Back in the 80s, 90s, I remember those photos. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not like that anymore. It's the big scale production. It's a Hollywood. It's a road show. So it's going to be. We'll never see it back in a small venue again. The NFL wants to have the visual of fans being there, and over 200,000 people. That's what they're going to see. That's what you're going to have in Pittsburgh next year, and it gets bigger and better. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun in Pittsburgh next year.
Well said. My final words is, of course, the NBA today. Playoffs, Game 4. Pistons lost in a very controversial way.
What the hell was that? What the hell?
I have no idea. That last shot attempt was apparently, and NBA did say that was a foul on Josh Hart.
It was a foul. Yeah.
Right.
Terrible.
Well, it's terrible after the game was already over, And I just hate that these refs in every sport pretty much really takes no accountability seriously. And then, they just say, oh, sorry, we should have called the foul. Our bad. No, dude, the game was already determined, unfortunately. And I understand the Pistons fans will probably complain about, JB Bickerstaff and his coaching acumen and everything. But listen, that one, they should have probably given a foul on Josh Hart. I understand that they let both teams play, but when it's a foul, you need to make that call a foul. And then Lakers lost a very a close one. They had the lead, and then somehow they really, really let it get away. Now they're down 3-1 in Minnesota after losing the last two in Minnesota.
Right.
The New York, obviously, the NBA definitely. The conspiracy theorists will say that they want the New York team, to play as long as possible for the ratings. Mm-hmm. Let's see if the Lakers are going down or if they're going to be able to wilt their way back into, Game 5, Game 6, and then push it to Game 7. As long as possible right now. The Denver series was, Denver had a 20-point lead and then let it get away before that. Wild finish where Aaron Gordon slammed the ball from a pass of Jokic. Just as the time hit 0, the ball went into the basket, barely. So it's a 2-2 series right now. It's very, very interesting to see what's happening in the NBA right now. Of course, OKC dominated and swept the Memphis yesterday, I believe, or today. Either one, it's over. So now Memphis has the luxury of just basically waiting whoever comes out of the other series, and have plenty of time to rest and prepare for this. So, and also I will say my condolences to Mike Patrick formerly of ESPN, yep, who passed away. I think this week, right?
He passed like last weekend, but yeah, it was a very sad. He passed at the age of 80. I was on a podcast earlier this week talking about it, Steven, and I'll send a link over to I'll put back up on my socials.
You turn on lights. I
talked with TJ Reeves over in Tampa, who does the last word on sports media on the podcast.
Yeah.
We talked about Mike Patrick, who worked on the early days of ESPN, was the original announcer of Sunday Night Football on ESPN, by the way. By the way, for those of you who don't remember, ESPN had the original Sunday Night Football package. It was a half season, 8 games back in 1987. And then in 1998, got the whole package after TNT had taken the first half in 1991. So he called Sunday Night Football. He unfortunately didn't come over to Monday Night Football when ESPN took over that package in 2006. Called pretty much college football and also the College World Series. He called college basketball with Dick Vitale. Versatile announcer, very good announcer.
Very versatile, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, unfortunately was forced out.
Mostly ACC, yeah.
Yeah, he called a lot of ACC games before he got picked up by ESPN. Very good announcer, could call. I mean, he never called attention to himself, although he had that great viral video that he had with Todd Blackledge in 2007 when he said, "What is Britney doing with her life?" What very funny, about Britney Spears, a very funny viral video. But overall, great announcer, and he will be missed. Mm-hmm. Our condolences go out to him and his family, and Mike Patrick. I'm glad you mentioned that, Steve. I totally forgot about that, but I'm glad you mentioned.
No. I lived in Washington D.C. attending, George Washington, doing sports management program. So he's a D.C. area resident. I actually seen him once or twice out there. I even one time shook his hand and said, "I'm a big fan of yours." From NFL, Sunday night, broadcast with Joe Theismann and the late Paul McGuire. Yeah, that was a really good broadcast team on Sunday night, and he's also, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, George Washington University alumni as well. Let me double check just to make sure.
I don't think he was an alum, but he was a big fan. He also was from West Virginia too, Steven. So that's where he grew up. He wasn't. I don't think he was an alum, but he was a big fan of George Washington, and he did a great job.
He actually did go to George Washington.
He did? Okay, he's a big supporter of GW, and he, as you mentioned, was in Washington. He lived in Washington, did Maryland basketball too, Steven. Also to
and then also work for WJLA, local ABC 7 affiliate.
Right.
Yes.
Yep. And also, I can't forget this. When they first started Sunday Night Football, Steven, in that half-season package, the first year, he worked with Roy Firestone. He was supposed to be the Howard Cosell of the Sunday Night Football package and a rotating announcer. They had a guest announcer every week. That stopped, because you couldn't really get a good chemistry. So they signed Joe Theismann, who was working with CBS at the time. So they brought him over, and they teamed up all the way through the end of the Sunday night package in 2005 on ESPN. And as you mentioned, Paul McGuire came over in 1998. Very fun announcing team. They had some great games too.
Yes.
So
absolutely. Yeah. A true legend, that left us, unfortunately. But, Mike Patrick was 80 years old, and as a former George Washington alum, is very proud to have a wonderful, well-respected veteran voice like him in my school as well.
Right.
Ken, thanks as always for doing this. I know we got a little bit of a late start. I was trying to do my laundry in the laundry in my apartment complex just wasn't working properly just before, so it took me a little bit of long time to get it going. But thank you to 162 people who came over to watch us on our live stream as always, and let's do this again next Sunday night, Ken. 7 p.m. Eastern as always. If it's subject to change, or if we need to cancel because one of us isn't available, then we'll make sure to inform you on our X handle account. You can follow me on Twitter at Bears Fan Steven, and then Fang can be found, as you see here, after the YouTube.com channel. It is at Fang's Bites, which is the same as his X handle there as well. Ken, have a wonderful week. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night, and let's do this again next Sunday.
Yeah, we'll see you again next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're gonna make sure this is consistent for you, so we're not jumping all over the place. So thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for being with us. Thanks for all 162 of you who are staying with us, and hopefully they'll tell your friends and subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back with you again next Sunday night.